engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, the Minot State Professional Communications Department proudly brings to you the Striha Sports Podcast with your host, Parker Striha.
Hello and welcome back to the Striha Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Parker Striha, and on today's episode, I'm going to be talking about Minot State University football, as well as previewing the 2023 season for the team. I'm by no means professional, but I do love talking about sports, so thank you for joining me. So, as this episode goes on, you're going to kind of get the gist of what I'm doing. I'm going to start off just by kind of talking about some things that have happened to the team in the last 5 years. I believe I went back to 2017 or 2018 because the 5 years got a little weird with 2020 obviously being canceled due to COVID. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about some of the stuff from the last 5 years, whether that's records, some stats, stuff like that. And then we're going to jump into this 2023 team, their schedule, the roster, the coaching staff. And then I'll give my thoughts throughout it. I obviously am a Minot State student, and I do have a pretty good relationship with a lot of the guys on this football team and the coaching staff. So I got to be very careful what I say because I'm not trying to get anyone mad at me, even though I don't really think any of my thoughts are going to be bad, because a lot of the stuff, at least at the beginning, is just fact. It's just stuff that's happened, so it's not my opinion. But without further ado, we're just going to start off by just talking about some stuff that's happened in the past for this Beavers football team. So in the last 5 years, that is 2017, 2018, 2019, 2021, and 2022, the team had a 10-45 record over those 5 seasons. So obviously not great. I know in my couple years at Minot State, I think they've only won 3 games, which, as a fan, it sucks. I can't imagine what it would feel like to be a player, a coach, administrator, something like that, watching the team lose all those games. And I'm not going to come out and say it's because of players. I'm not going to say it's because of coaching, because I don't know, because I wasn't in the locker room. I wasn't on the field. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. I've literally just been a photographer for the football team here and there and for the newspaper here, so I don't really know a lot about what actually goes on behind the scenes. And as a fan, there's only some, obviously you can say, they're not playing well enough, play calling isn't great, stuff like that, but you only know so much as a fan. But the 10-45 record, it speaks for itself. That's really bad. Their average finish in the standings has been about 11 in the NSIC over the last 5 years, which also isn't great, because that is I believe that's one of the very bottoms. I can't remember exactly how many teams are in the conference, but I know that's at the bottom, if not like one of the top or bottom 2 or 3 average finishes in the standings for the conference. But over those last 5 seasons, they've averaged 181.6 points per season on offense, while allowing an average of 409.6 points per season. And then when you bring that down to a per game average, they were scoring 16.5 points per game while allowing 37.2 points per game. And those stats alone are kind of misleading, because you could have one game where they score 10 and you could have one game where they score 45. And then that average for how many they've scored in those 2 games is going to come out to like the 27.5 or whatever that number is. So, I think looking at that, the stats or like the score, like points and stuff, can be very misleading, because you're going to have one game where you score a lot. You're going to have one game where you don't score a lot, and then it's just going to make your numbers look weird. But, objectively, when you look at it, to be outscored by over 200 points on average, over 200 points a season, obviously isn't great. Getting outscored by 20 points a game obviously is not great. But like I kind of said with the record, I don't know if that's players. I don't know if that's coaching. And either way, like it's not great. You never want to be, losing is one thing, but you don't want to be losing by that much on average. And like I said, obviously not every game is a 20-point loss. Not every game is a loss, but at the same time, it's just not something you want to see happening. A highlighted player I had for this team is Sebastian Gutierrez, who was with the Beavers from 2016 to 2021. He played in 40 games for the Beavers as an offensive lineman. I believe he actually came to the university as a tight end before being switched to offensive lineman. He is currently on the Kansas City Chiefs after stints with the Denver Broncos, Las Vegas Raiders, and New England Patriots. So, wishing him well in all of his future endeavors. He may be coming on the podcast in the future. Not sure yet. Got to figure out some stuff for that. But there's a chance. We're kind of moving on. Their biggest win over the last 5 years is by 13 points against the University of Mary in 2018. So in any of these games, they're all very close games in the games that they've won, which, a win is a win. You'd like to win by a little bit more just because it kind of takes the pressure off of you, I'd say. It's a little less nerve-wracking to win by 20, 30, stuff like that, but it's not as likely as it is to win by 5, 10, 15, stuff like that. But yeah, biggest win by 13 points. Their biggest loss also came in 2018, but it was at Bemidji State. They lost by 62 points. Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can say about that. Not a lot of ways you can shake that where it looks good. A 62-point loss is horrible, and that's pretty much all I'm going to leave that at. They had 19 one-score games over those 5 years, and what I considered a one-score game was a game decided by 8 points or less. So yeah, 19 of those games, they had a record of 8-11 in those games. So obviously a losing record isn't great, and out of those 55 games to have less than half be one score isn't ideal, because 8 of their total 10 wins over those couple seasons came in those one-score games. There was probably some that were 9, 10 points, but still not great. You'd like to see that record in those games be a little bit better, even if it's 500, not 3 games under it. But, you're not going to get a 500 win percentage in 19 games. It just doesn't add up that way. Okay, and kind of moving on, I'm going to be talking about some stats, some game highs, season highs, stuff like that. And if the stats had a tie, I just put down who the most recent person to do it was, and I got all of these numbers off of the Minot State Athletics website for football, so don't come at me. These are not my numbers. I found them online. So for most passing yards in a game, it was 408 back in 2021. Dawson McCleary did that. Most rushing yards in a game was 224 with Lane. Some of these names are going to be fun. Lane Torgerson, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry, back in 2018. Most receiving yards in a game was Nathan Young in 2021 with 190. Most passing yards in a season was Dawson McCleary last season with 1,700. Most rushing yards in a season was Ali Muhammad in 2021. He had 1,159 rushing yards. Most receiving yards in a season was Peyton Lamore in 2021. He had 703. Most passing touchdowns in a game, Dawson McCleary had 3 in 2021. Most rushing touchdowns in a game was Ali Muhammad with 4 in 2021. Most receiving touchdowns in a game was Peyton Lamore, who had 2 in 2021. Most passing touchdowns in a season was Ben Belinsky in 2018 with 11 of them. Most rushing touchdowns in a season was Ali Muhammad in 2021 with 9. And most receiving touchdowns in a season was Levante Bushnell in 2018 with 8. Kind of flipping it over to a couple defensive stats. Most tackles in a game was 22. In 2018, it was Kaiwan Owens. Most sacks in a game was Logan Kruger in 2021 with 3. Most interceptions in a game was Keontae Goudeau. I hope I pronounced that right. In 2017, he had 3. Most tackles in a season was Kaiwan Owens. In 2018, he had 108. Most sacks in a season was 4 for Logan Kruger in 2022. And most interceptions in a season was Nylan Miller-Levi last season in 2022 with 6 of them. So now that we've kind of went over the last 5 years just briefly for the Minot State Beavers, it's time to look forward to 2023 and beyond. This team has 32 incoming freshmen and 21 incoming transfers, according to their roster on the Minot State Athletics website. That is 2 Division I FBS transfers and 1 FCS Division I transfer, and then 18 junior college or community college transfers. And 2 of those transfers have been with the team since last spring. I mean, that's not super important, but that extra month or so that they had for spring ball is very important in my opinion. Some key losses in my opinion from last season: Ben Belinsky, Caleb Ness, Jordan Sanford, Troy Cowell, Logan Kruger, Peyton Lamore, and Ali Muhammad, all key players for the Beavers over the last couple seasons, and last year unfortunately was their last with the team. Moving on, after last season, or going into the season, I should say, Minot State has basically a completely brand new coaching staff, except for 2 guys, which I will talk about as I go through. So starting out with the guy in charge, we have head coach Ian Shields. This is his first season with the team. He has more than 20 years of coaching experience. Then assistant head coach / offensive line coach / community service coordinator is Tom Seamy. His first season with the team, and he has over 15 years of coaching experience. Then we have the defensive coordinator / linebackers coach / camp coordinator. That is Mike Bruno. This is his first season with the team, and he has over 10 years of coaching experience. Then we have the secondary coach / academic liaison. That's Anthony Garnett. First season with the team, 15 years of coaching experience. Next, defensive line coach / football facilities coordinator / video coordinator is Daryl McBride. This is his first season with the team, and he has just under 10 years of coaching experience. Defensive grad assistant / cornerbacks coach, that is Jeremiah Johnson. This is his first season with the team and his first season coaching. Next, we have the running back coach / special teams coordinator / recruiting coordinator, Mike Famiglietti. This is his second season with the team, and he has just under 10 years of coaching experience. Then we have the tight ends coach. That is Daniel DeYoung. This is his 4th season with the team. First 3 were as a grad assistant, and he has less than 5 years of coaching experience. Then we have the volunteer defensive coach, Brian Billy. This is his first season with the team. And then wide receivers coach, Jaleel Grimes. This is his first season with the team and his first season coaching football that isn't NAIA, Intercollegiate Women's Flag Football. So other than Coach DeYoung and Coach Pham, this is a brand new coaching staff, and it looks very promising in my opinion, and I'm not just saying that because I've worked with a lot of these guys, especially last spring. But no, I truly think this coaching staff is going to do wonders for this team. I think they bring in, or with the amount of experience combined that all of these coaches have, even with some of the guys that are just kind of getting into coaching, that is a lot of football knowledge that they can pass on. And I mean, I'm personally really excited to see what this coaching staff does. I'm excited to see the offenses and defenses and all their schemes and stuff that they are implementing. I think they're going to be really exciting. And I think they are all, from what I've seen, they're, how do I say it? I can tell they enjoy being here, and I can tell that the players enjoy being coached by these guys. I think it's a very good pairing, and I think it's a really good connection that they're going to have for years to come. Moving forward into their 2023 schedule, I'm going to go through every single one of their games, talk about it briefly, and then I'm going to say whether I think it's a win or a loss for the team. Starting off, they host Southwest Minnesota State University on August 31st at 6 p.m. They are currently 0-5 all-time against SMSU, and all games have been decided by 8 or less points other than the first meeting in 2013. A couple game notes for Southwest Minnesota State. They had a 4-7 record last year. They beat Minot State 27-20 in overtime last season. They lost the NSIC second leading rusher from last season. That was Jesse Sherwood. And their defense only had 15 sacks last year, which was second worst in the NSIC. So just kind of looking at that, defense hasn't really been able to pressure the quarterback very well. And with a lot of these games being very close for Minot State against, I believe the Mustangs is their mascot, I think Minot State's going to come out hot. I think they're going to come out strong. I think they're going to be energized. They're going to be ready to go with this new coaching staff in their first season together. And I think Minot State is going to start their season off with a win at home. Remember, if you are in the area, the first 1,000 fans in the stands get a free t-shirt, and then there is a fireworks show after that game. Moving on to week 2 at Minnesota State University Moorhead. That is September 9th at noon. The Beavers are 1-9 against the Dragons, and the last 4 games have been lost by 12 or more points. So they haven't been super close games, but they're just over a one-score game in my metrics at least. Some notes: the Dragons were 4-7 last year. They did beat Minot State 36-14 last season. They're returning the NSIC second leading passer in Jack Strand, and 2 of the top NSIC receivers in Gage Florence and Ryan Bieberdorf. I hope I pronounced that second name correctly. So their passing offense is going to be very good and very dangerous this year. And the only downside to that kind of counteracts what I just said is their offensive line allowed 56 sacks last year, which was most in the NSIC. And that can be a misleading number because that doesn't necessarily mean they got beat 56 times. I mean, kind of they did, but it's not necessarily that the quarterback just stood in the pocket and got sacked 56 times. There's a lot of different things that go into getting sacked that many times, but clearly the offensive line didn't do a great job. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think Minot State is going to not necessarily, I already said they're going to come out strong. I don't think that means they're going to win every game. I do think this game is a toss-up, but I do think the Dragons will win. I'm personally, even though I'm at Minot State, I'm very high on Gage Florence. I think he came out last year and was a really strong receiver in his first year of playing with the Dragons. I went to high school with him, so I may be a little biased. But I think it's going to be a close game, but I think it's going to be a loss for Minot State. Moving on, they host Minnesota State University Mankato on September 16th at 2 p.m. That is Minot State's homecoming game. Minot State is 0-5 against Mankato, and every single loss has been by 28 or more points. So definitely has not been a good series for Minot State. Clearly hasn't been close in any way, shape, or form. I believe the Mavericks is their mascot. They were 10-3 last season. They're returning one of the NSIC's top passers in Hayden Eckern and receiver Niles Williams. And they started last season with 4 single-score games, and then they ended up winning their last 5 games by 14 to 27 points. So definitely started off a little slow. I guess I would have to really go back and dig into it, but a couple close games, and then they really turned it on at the end of the season. They did make it to the semifinals in the playoffs, but they lost by 3 points. Mankato is very, very good team. They are a NSIC powerhouse. I believe they were ranked last year or the year before in Division II. I would love to say Minot State's going to win this, and I hope it's a closer game than 28 points, but I think I'm going to give this game to Mankato. And unfortunately for Minot State, after that game, they move on to a little easier of an opponent, but definitely not an easy opponent by any means, just maybe a little easier than Mankato. They go down and play the University of Sioux Falls on September 23rd at 1 o'clock. They are 0-9 against Sioux Falls, and all losses have been by 15 or more points. So another series that Minot State has not played too well in, obviously, with those losses. Sioux Falls was 8-3 last season, and they beat Minot State 34-0. They did lose the NSIC's leader in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns from last season in Thurl Reisdorfer. and they had the most efficient red zone offense in the NSIC, but they were also one of the most penalized teams in the NSIC. So obviously losing the leading rusher in yards and touchdowns is a huge loss, but I think that red zone efficiency is going to be huge. I think Minot State's going to have to kind of get them out of a rhythm, so to say. Don't let them get in that red zone. Don't let them get close. Sioux Falls is another really, really, really good team in the NSIC. I could see this being a close game. Depends on how you really look at close. I don't know if it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, how many points, but I do think Sioux Falls will take this game. Like I said, could be close, but I don't know if it will be. Moving on, they host Wayne State College on September 30th at 1 o'clock. They're 1-5 against Wayne State, and 2 of the last 3 losses have been shutouts. A couple notes: they had a 9-3 record last season, beat Minot State 49-10. Their starting quarterback, Nick Bone, threw for over 2,000 yards and 19 passing touchdowns last season, while also rushing for over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. Nick was top 3 in passing yards and top 10 in rushing yards in the NSIC last season. So definitely a very dangerous dual threat that I'm willing to bet Minot State is going to game plan against. But yeah, they beat Minot State 49-10. Their defense held Minot to only 23 net rushing yards, while also having 4 sacks and forcing 3 turnovers. So just an absolutely dominating defensive performance. And what's crazy, they did that, but their defense allowed 186.8 rushing yards per game last season, which was 3rd worst in the NSIC. So, I mean, Minot State just clearly didn't have some good luck against Wayne State last year. This is another game I could see being hopefully closer than last season's game was. I have it marked down as a loss, but, Minot State may be out to prove some stuff, and this may be an upset. A couple of these games could very easily be an upset, but I just have it marked down as a loss right now. Then moving on, they go to Northern State University on October 7th at 2:30 p.m. They're 0-10 against Northern State, and only 4 of those games have been decided by 8 or less points. Some notes: last season, Northern State had a 6-5 record, and they beat Minot State 38-10. 5 of their wins last season were by 20 or more points, so obviously a very high-scoring team. Defensive lineman Ian Marshall had 14 sacks last season, which was 2nd in the NSIC, and he had 25 tackles for loss, which was 1st in the NSIC. He was also the 2022 NSIC Defensive Player of the Year, and he had 4 sacks against Minot State last year. I think he is a huge key, and I think he is going, I don't want to compare him to Aaron Donald, but just kind of the numbers that I'm looking at, he put up Aaron Donald-esque numbers last season, which makes him definitely dangerous and a game breaker, a disruptor. I think he's someone that could win the game for Northern State single-handedly, but kind of looking past him, the only quarterback on their roster with college snaps is Anthony Vespo, and he doesn't even have that much experience. He appeared in 4 games last year and had 170 yards, a touchdown, and an interception on 9 pass attempts. So definitely an inexperienced quarterback room, which Minot State could take advantage of. I have it marked down as a loss, but I also think this is a game that could be an upset win. Then they host Concordia University St. Paul on October 14th at 1 o'clock. Minot State is 3-7 against Concordia University, and they have won 2 of their last 3 meetings. Concordia University was 1-10 last year, just like Minot State, and then they ended up beating Minot State 19-11. Their defense allowed 209.5 rushing yards per game last season, which was 2nd worst in the NSIC, and their kicker, not too great, went 3 for 11 on field goals. Obviously, the kicking may not be as important to some people when you're looking at some stuff, but when some of these games come down to single point, I don't know how I'm trying to say that, when these games get close and a kick could decide whether you win or lose, you prefer your kicker to be a little bit better on field goals. I have this game marked down as a win for the Beavers. Just looking at that rushing yards per game, I think that's really bad. And I think Minot State, like I said, they've won 2 of the last 3 meetings. I don't think they want to go back on that, so to say. I don't think they're going to want to start losing those games again. I think they're going to come out hot in that game as the playoffs are getting close. I don't have them making the playoffs, but this is when everything's going to start getting colder. Everything matters a little bit more, and I think they're going to go protect the Herb, and I think they're going to win. Next, we have them hosting the University of Minnesota Duluth on October 21st at 1 o'clock. They are 0-10 against Duluth, and MSU has only scored more than 10 points in one of those games once, which is not good. If you are not able to score more than 10 points, that is very hard for you to win these games. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. Some notes: Duluth was 8-3 last year, and they beat Minot State 51-7. They had 2 players rush for over 700 yards last year: Kyle Waljasper, their starting quarterback this season, and Wade Sullivan, who was a grad running back last year. As a team, they had 39 sacks last year, which was third in the NSIC, and then 22 different players registered at least half a sack. And they also haven't had less than 8 wins in a season since head coach Kurt Weiss, I don't know how to pronounce his name, has been with the team since 2012. So I have this game down as a loss. I think Duluth is another one of those very good NSIC teams. Obviously, if Minot State can score more than 10 points, I think at least it's a win, just based off of the fact that they've only done it once in their last 10 meetings. That's not great at all. I think it's a loss, unfortunately. It could be, I think Minot State could put up a fight, but I don't know if they'll be able to overcome Duluth. Moving into the final games of the season, they go to the University of Mary on October 28th at noon. That is the Battle of the Big Lake. They are 8-4 against Mary, and Minot State has won 4 of the last 5 meetings. Some notes for the Marauders: last season they had a 2-9 record, and they lost 17-10 to Minot State. They lost leading passer Logan Nelson, leading rusher Dave Small Jr., and leading receiver Danny Kittner. So definitely some really big losses on offense for that Marauders team. Offense is definitely going to be a little weaker this year, and a defense that only had 13 sacks last season, it's not necessarily looking that much better. But they did announce former NFL and University of Montana player Sean Schillinger as head coach, I believe just at the end of last season. So similar to Minot State, they're going to be rolling out a new coach, and it'll be interesting to see how this game goes. I have Minot State winning this again. I think their roster is just better. I think their coaching staff is better. And I think this game won't necessarily be close. Then they go to Michigan Technical University on November 4th at 1 o'clock p.m. This is the first ever meeting between these two teams, and it is Minot State's first non-conference game since joining NCAA Division II. Some notes: MTU was 4-7 last year. They're not a very good rushing team. They only had 770 total rushing yards last season, and their leading rusher only had 381. Similar to UMary, they named a new head coach last November. It was former player and offensive coordinator Dan Metlatch. He was named head coach. I think this is a win for Minot State. It's probably going to be close just because it's not a very familiar opponent. So it could go either way, but I think the Minot State Beavers are going to pull that one out. And going into their last game of the season at Winona State University on November 11th at 1 o'clock, they are 0-5 against Winona State, and 4 of those 5 losses were by 30 or more points. Some notes for the Warriors, I believe, is their mascot. They were 8-4 last year. They beat Minot State 24-10. But they had one of the worst passing offenses and defenses last season in terms of yards per game and yards allowed per game. That makes sense. And they also have won 7 or more games in every season since 2016. Now, if Minot State can kind of capitalize on that closer scored game from last year, I think they could make this an even closer game, and I think they could pull out a win here to finish off their season. I have it marked as a loss, but it could definitely be a win. So kind of moving on from the schedule, we're going to look at the team overview as a whole. So I'm going to be going through each position group, naming whoever's on there, kind of giving my thoughts on the group, maybe some specific players, and then we're going to get out of here. But just before I get into it, all positions and years are based off of the roster on the Athletics website. Starters are also just my predictions based off of previous seasons or what I've seen in practice for the 1 or 2 I've been at so far this fall. And for any Minot State player who may listen to this podcast, I'm very sorry if I butcher your name. A lot of you, I just don't know how to pronounce some of these names, but I'm going to try my hardest. Starting out for quarterbacks, I'm hoping it is DeAndre Fair. He's a redshirt freshman. Dawson McCleary is a junior. Tommy Ansley is a freshman. Jaden Sparrow is a freshman. Marshawn Campbell, a junior. I want to say that's AJ Vance is a freshman. And then Cole Hansen is a redshirt freshman. McCleary is the projected starter. He has been the starter for the last 2 seasons. And unless he has a bad fall camp, I can't see his spot getting taken, but things happen. Brand new coaching staff, you never really know how that's going to go. Running backs, Evan Lovett Jr., he is the projected starter and an NSIC player to watch. He was named that by for Minot State by the NSIC just this fall. They have AJ Jones, a sophomore, Trajan Butler, who's a freshman, Aaron Wood, who's a senior, Miles West is a freshman, Tyler Stonebreaker is a redshirt freshman, Jason Hogan is a sophomore, John Eubanks is a freshman, Devin Daniels is a freshman, and Sam Buchanan is a redshirt freshman. This is also his first season at running back after being a linebacker last season, I believe. Like I said, Evan Lovett, projected starter this year after being the backup for the last 2 seasons. I'm really excited to watch him get a bulk of the carries. Finally, he is extremely talented, built like a brick something house. I'm not going to say that just because, don't want to get in trouble by some certain people, but he's built. A guy's a freak, and I think he's going to be really good this year. Wide receivers, we have Joe Norman. He's a junior. Daniel Stokes is a junior. Zach Roebuck is a junior. Eric Palmquist, junior. Jaden Harris is a freshman. Eli Singleton is a freshman. Isaiah Griffin, junior. Jonathan Noriega, redshirt sophomore. Nathan Young is a junior. Grant Huber is a junior. Johnny Bellino is a redshirt freshman. Denzel Williams is a redshirt freshman. Tyler Barnes, redshirt sophomore. Ralph DeRolis, I hope I pronounced that right, is a junior. Trent Adams, redshirt sophomore. And James Mintmere is a junior. The projected starters I have are, I don't really have projected starters just because I don't know how many receivers they're even going to start. But I have just listed, I have Joe Norman, Daniel Stokes, Nathan Young, Denzel Williams, and Eric Palmquist, just kind of based off of, I know Joma, Eric, and Nathan have been starters for the team in the past. I think Denzel has been I've liked watching him in practice the couple times I've been out. I think he's going to be really good. And Stokes, I think he also looks very good, but definitely just kind of a weird position group. Definitely a lot of talent, a lot to prove, I should say, because there's a lot of unproven guys when it comes to actual NSIC regular season games, but I'm excited to watch the position group go out and play. Tight ends, I have Josh Pinello, redshirt sophomore, Mitch Heinert, a freshman, Ben Hardy, a senior, Carson Heinen, a senior, and Damon Darling, a redshirt sophomore. This is another one. I don't really know which one they're going to start, so I have Ben Hardy and Carson Heinen as projected starters. I'm projecting it to be one or the other. I just truly don't know who it will actually be. Moving in to the offensive line, Matt Sanchez is a junior. He is a transfer from College of the Sequoias. Was a first-team All-Conference last year and was an All-California first-team offensive player last season. Ooh, some of these names are going to be fun. Maonri, I can't pronounce that. Tanu Maipia, I really am sorry if I butchered that. I do feel bad. He's a freshman. Steve Williams, junior. Aiden Shoemate, freshman. Skylar Young, freshman. Max Bray, sophomore. Brady Dutcher, redshirt sophomore. Jake Swerple, junior. Jaron Winters is a freshman. Enoke Samita is a freshman. Clayton Hawkins, redshirt sophomore. Joe Varos is a redshirt sophomore. Jonathan Velasquez is a junior. Jamal Neal is a freshman. Vili Fidapai is a sophomore. Zach Thielgis is a redshirt sophomore. John Subiono is a redshirt sophomore. And Puka Pereira, I'm assuming is how that's pronounced, is a freshman. Another group that I truly, outside of probably Johnny Velasquez and Jake Swerple, I really don't know who the other starters are going to be. I wouldn't be shocked if Vili, Clayton, and Max Bray are all starters this year, because I know they all played a couple games last season, even starting a few. But another position group, a lot of depth, a lot of unproven guys that are going to have to fight it out in practice to get that starting job, but definitely a very talented group. A lot of size, which is awesome for an offensive line, and it's really been fun to watch those guys out there on the field. Defensive line, Lafayette Body is a senior. Josh Will, redshirt freshman. Phoenix Tusa is a freshman. Emmett Espino is a junior. DJ Schneibel is a junior. Peli Natino Vito is a junior. John Dillon is a freshman. Ryan Ten Holscher is a junior. Blake Thompson is a freshman. Brody Schneibel is a freshman. Armando Ramos is a junior. Lyric Harris is a freshman. And Jason Petty is a junior. I have Vito, Schneibel, and Beatty all down as starters. Another group I'm not totally sure. I mean, I think regardless of who starts, you're going to have a lot of guys coming in and out just because there is some really talented depth in that group. But yeah, just not too sure who actually gets to start. Linebackers, Carson Psycho, junior. Jonathan Leone, junior. Parker McClure, sophomore. Trevor Catronio is a freshman. Tim Steins is a junior. Blake Espino, redshirt freshman. Jack St. Fleur is a junior. Brian Weatherford is a redshirt freshman. Ropati Analico. Wow, I'm really bad at some of these names. I'm sorry. A freshman. Justin Profit is a junior. This is also his first season as a linebacker / pass rusher. Connor Reitzman, freshman. Isaac Guzman, junior. Derek Robbins, sophomore. Just got put on scholarship. Congratulations, D-Rob. Ike McKaylee, freshman. Seth Nastal, redshirt sophomore. Noah, yes, I don't know how to pronounce that. Iosefa, I think, junior. Jackson Gridley, redshirt freshman. Cody Grossinger, redshirt freshman. And Sean Pugh, Sikora, redshirt sophomore. I have Jonathan Leone and Carson Psycho. I'm willing to put money that they're going to be starters, two very different linebacker positions. But I also don't know how many linebackers they're going to be starting. So I also have Parker McClure down as a question mark. I don't know. He's the guy next up, in my opinion, to be that off-the-ball linebacker starter. Defensive backs, Mizell Williams, redshirt sophomore. Isaiah Bigby is a junior. Was the second-team All-NSIC North Division last season. Carson Chrisman, junior. Nylan Miller-Levi is a senior and is an NSIC player to watch. He was also recently named to the D2Football.com 2023 Elite 100 watch list, and last season was a second-team All-American and a second-team All-NSIC North Division. Charlie Reitzman, junior. Sean Hoover, junior. Tyreek Williams, redshirt freshman. Matthew Posas is a junior. Philip Green, senior. Trent Cherry, redshirt freshman. Vince Ketchup, freshman. Cody Reitzman, redshirt freshman. Beto Ledesma, redshirt freshman. Darrell Carr, or Darrell, I don't know which one it is, freshman. Chase Doty, redshirt sophomore. Will Dampier, junior. Deshaun Carter Jr., he is one of the transfers that has been with Minot State since spring from Minnesota State Community and Technical College. Last year for that college, he was first team All MCAC, first team All Region, and was an NJCAA All American. Justice Williams, freshman. Marquise Hill, freshman. Theodore Gruovich, Jr., Aiden Scott, Senior, Landon Smith, freshman, and Roman Pickens, Jr. My projected starters are Chase Doty, Deshaun Carter, Charlie Reitzman, Nylan Miller-Levi, Carson Chrisman, and Isaiah Bigby. Like with a lot of these, very talented group. I think it has a lot of potential for a lot of these younger guys, but I really don't know how many guys they're going to be starting from this group. So it's kind of hard to say who is going to be actually starting, but definitely some of my favorite players on the team, I should say, are in this position group. I think Nyland's a monster out there, one of the most athletic guys I've ever seen. Carson Chrisman, that's my guy, was a starter his freshman year, I believe, and I think he's really good out there. Obviously, Bigby's really great, but definitely a good group that I'm excited to watch this season. And then moving into special teams, I have Justin Cash, who is a junior, first team All NSIC North Division last year. Jeremy Caruso is a freshman. Nate Peterson is a junior. And Stephen Brown is a redshirt sophomore. This is another one that's a little weird. I think Justin Cash is for sure a starter because he's the starting punter. At least he was last year. I don't know who the starting kicker is going to be because Caruso and Peterson are both kickers. I have Peterson down as my starter, but I can't promise or guarantee anything. And then I have Brown as the starting long snapper, but that's another position. I have no idea who's going to start there. But yeah, just kind of looking at the team as a whole, I think it's a very talented team, very deep team, a lot of guys on this roster. I think when you look at especially the skills positions outside, like especially running back, wide receiver, tight end, a lot of guys who haven't really done anything on the actual game field, whether that's from injuries, just haven't been able to play, anything like that. Just not a lot of production from a lot of those guys. So I'm excited to see how they come out and play this year in a brand new offense. I definitely think a lot of those guys have some potential. Quarterback, it'll be interesting to see year 3 Dawson McCleary in a brand new offense. He's been one of my favorite players on the team, I believe Wyoming, a gunslinger. And personally, I'm probably the most excited for this Minot State defense. I mean, I worked with Coach Bruno during the spring a little bit during spring ball, and I really like what he's been doing with the team. I like a lot of the defensive coaches and what they've been doing with their position groups. I think they got some dogs on that defense. I think they're going to come out hungry. They're going to want to come out. They're going to want to get the ball, get the quarterback. This may sound like a dumb brickhead thing, but see ball, get ball, see ball, hit whoever has the ball. I think this defense is going to be very physical, and I think it's very talented, very athletic. And I think the offense may start a little slow this season just due to the whole new offense, but I think this defense is going to really anchor the team right away, and I think the defense is going to shock some people and turn some heads. But kind of moving past that, here is my record prediction. I didn't say it earlier, and just a couple final thoughts I have. After going 1-10 last year and 2-9 the previous year, I have the Beavers finishing 4-7 this year. I think they could win or lose 1 or 2 more games probably. But those are just my predictions. I don't think expectations should be too high on this team this year, whether that's from me, the media, fans, whatever, just based on the brand new coaching staff and a lot of unknowns at a lot of key positions for this team. They can and probably will be better than they have been in the past. And like I said, could start slow on offense, could start slow as the offense is trying to find its footing, but I think it should get clicking and be really smooth as the season goes on. And I think the defense will be better than it has been in the past. You have a lot of returning starters on that defense. And I think, like I said, they're going to turn some heads. They're going to be physical. They're going to put people on their butts.
4,
and they
3,
are going to get eyes on that screen
1,
for the Beavers.
0.
But
all
that
engine
is
running.
all I have for you guys today.
Liftoff.
Don't
We
forget
have a
to like and
liftoff.
subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. Thank you for tuning in.